The first thing Evelyn Cross registered was the sharp hum of a flickering neon light. It buzzed like an insect trapped behind her skull, relentless, unforgiving. Her eyelids felt heavy, but she forced them open, greeted by the sight of a cracked ceiling and the scent of damp wood. The air was thick, musty, carrying the stale remnants of cigarette smoke. She was lying on a bed. No, a cot. The sheets were stiff, wrinkled with the imprint of restless sleep. A dull ache pulsed in the back of her head as she sat up, her body sluggish, unfamiliar. Her fingers trembled slightly as she reached for the nightstand, where a half-empty glass of water stood next to a small, silver object, a badge. Evelyn picked it up, the cold metal sending a jolt through her fingertips. Her reflection stared back at her from its polished surface, but the name engraved beneath it sent her stomach lurching. Detective Evelyn Cross. Detective? The word felt foreign, like a suit tailored for someone else. Her heartbeat drummed against her ribs. How had she ended up here? Where was here, exactly? The room looked like a low-end motel, the kind rented by the hour. The only luggage she seemed to have was the pile of clothes crumpled on the chair and a battered leather coat draped over the backrest. Fighting the fog in her mind, Evelyn stood, wincing as the floor creaked under her bare feet. The only window was grimy, the outside world distorted by streaks of rain. A neon sign blinked in the distance, its glow casting eerie shadows against the peeling wallpaper. A mirror hung crookedly beside the door. She hesitated before stepping closer. The woman staring back at her was familiar and alien all at once. Deep brown eyes, short-cropped dark hair, a faint scar on her left temple. Recognition flickered, but it slipped through her fingers like water. Who was she? A flash of movement caught her attention. A poster taped to the back of the door. No, not a poster. A missing persons report. Her own face stared back at her. The air left her lungs in a sharp exhale. Evelyn ripped the paper off the door, her eyes scanning the details with frantic urgency. Missing, Evelyn Cross. Last seen. 2 weeks ago, if found, contact authorities immediately. The room seemed to tilt. A sense of wrongness clawed at her chest. If she was missing, who had reported it? And why didn't she remember disappearing? The sudden ring of a phone made her flinch. A cheap motel landline sitting by the bedside. It rang again, insistent. She hesitated, then picked up. Hello? A breath on the other end. Then a low voice. Stop looking. A sharp click. The line went dead. Evelyn swallowed hard, gripping the receiver until her knuckles turned white. She wasn't just missing. Someone didn't want her to be found. Evelyn's grip on the missing persons poster tightened as she stepped out into the rain-slicked streets. The night air was sharp, cold enough to bite through her thin jacket. The neon haze of the city blurred as water pooled in the cracked pavement. Every shadow felt stretched, distorted, watching. She needed answers. Her first stop was the police station. If she was a detective, surely someone there would recognize her, explain why she had vanished. The station was a squat gray building, its fluorescent lights casting an artificial glow on the empty front desk. A tired-looking officer barely glanced up as she approached. "Can I help you?" he asked, tapping lazily at a keyboard. Evelyn hesitated. What was she supposed to say? "Hi, I think I used to work here, but I don't remember." Instead, she slid her badge onto the counter. "Detective Cross, I need to speak with someone in missing persons." The officer's brow furrowed. He studied the badge, then her face. "Detective Cross? That's not possible." A pit formed in her stomach. "Why not?" The man exhaled through his nose, shifting in his seat. "Because Detective Cross has been missing for 2 weeks. The case was closed yesterday." The room swayed. "Closed? By who?" The officer tapped a few keys, then frowned. "That's the thing. There's no signature, no final report, just a redacted notice, like it never happened. Evelyn's pulse quickened. Someone had erased her. Before she could press further, a voice called from behind. "You shouldn't be here." She turned sharply. A man in plain clothes stood in the hallway, eyes wide with something between shock and fear. A name surfaced from the haze. Detective Harris, her old partner. He took a step closer, voice low. "Evelyn, you need to stop digging." Her chest tightened. "Why? What happened to me?" He swallowed hard, glancing around as if someone might be listening. Then he leaned in, whispering 3 words that sent ice down her spine. "You did this." Evelyn stood frozen. Harris's words echoed in her mind. "You did this." She barely had time to react before he grabbed her arm, steering her toward a dimly lit corridor. "You need to leave now. If they know you're here." His voice cut off as a shadow moved outside the glass doors. A black car idled across the street, engine running. The kind of car that didn't belong. Harris cursed under his breath. "They're watching." "Who?" Evelyn demanded, pulse hammering. Harris shook his head. "No time. Go to the old precinct records room, corner of 12th and Vine. Find your case file." He hesitated, eyes darting to the door. "And if you remember, don't come looking for me." Then he was gone, disappearing into the depths of the station. Evelyn turned on her heel, pushing through the exit as the black car's headlights flicked on. The city swallowed her as she ran, her own past chasing close behind. Evelyn moved fast, her breath sharp against the cold night air. Every step sent ripples of pain through her skull, but she pushed forward, weaving through the alleys and side streets. Behind her, the hum of an engine followed, slow, deliberate. They weren't chasing her. They were tracking her. She reached 12th and Vine, a forgotten part of the city. The old precinct was a husk of what it once was, windows boarded, graffiti scarring the walls. A single door remained intact. She forced it open, stepping into darkness thick with dust and decay. The records room was in the basement. Evelyn moved quickly, her flashlight slicing through the gloom. Filing cabinets lined the walls, rusted shut. She yanked at the nearest one. Locked. The second, same. The third, it opened with a groan. Her fingers worked fast, flipping through the worn folders. Cross. Evelyn. There it was. She pulled the file free, heart pounding as she scanned the pages. The details were sparse, much of it blacked out. Missing. Case closed. No further investigation. It was as if she had never existed. Then she saw it. A single note, handwritten in the margin. Blackwell knows. A noise from above. The door creaked open. Someone else was here. Evelyn clutched the file and backed into the shadows, holding her breath as footsteps echoed down the stairwell. The hunt had just begun. Evelyn pressed herself into the shadows, steadying her breath as the footsteps descended. The dim light from the stairwell cast a long, shifting silhouette across the floor. Whoever they were, they moved with purpose. Slow, controlled, searching. She gripped the file tighter. Blackwell knows. The name meant nothing to her, but if it was important enough to be scribbled onto her own missing persons report, she had to find him, if she could make it out of here first. A flashlight beam swept across the room. Evelyn crouched lower, inching along the filing cabinets. A floorboard creaked beneath her weight. The light snapped toward her. "Detective Cross." The voice was calm, almost expectant. Evelyn's pulse pounded. She didn't recognize the speaker, but the way they said her name sent a chill through her. They know me. No time to think. She sprang forward, slamming the cabinet door shut as a distraction and sprinting toward the exit. A gunshot cracked behind her, splintering the doorframe just inches from her head. She didn't stop. Bursting into the night, she darted down the alley, the file tucked under her coat. The city swallowed her once again. Rain smeared the streetlights into blurred halos. She needed a name, a direction, something. She ducked into a phone booth, shaking fingers, pulling the file open again. At the bottom of the last page, in smudged ink, was an address. Blackwell was waiting. Evelyn stared at the address, her breath fogging up the glass of the phone booth. The rain drummed against the metal roof, a steady rhythm against the pounding in her skull. Whoever Blackwell was, he held the key to her past. She had no choice but to find him. She moved quickly, keeping to the back streets. The address led her to an old apartment building on the edge of the city. The windows were dark, the brick exterior weathered by time. A single light flickered above the entrance. She hesitated, then knocked. Nothing. She tried the door. Unlocked. Stepping inside, she was met with silence. The place smelled of dust and old paper. Bookshelves lined the walls, stacks of folders piled high. A desk sat in the center, papers scattered across its surface. And then, a voice behind her. "You shouldn't have come, Evelyn." She spun. A man stood in the doorway, his silhouette sharp against the dim light. He was older, his face worn, but his eyes were sharp, studying her like a puzzle missing its final piece. "Blackwell?" she asked, pulse quickening. He nodded slowly. "You don't remember, do you?" Evelyn clenched her jaw. "Remember what?" Blackwell exhaled, shaking his head. "The truth. About what you did, about why you disappeared." She stepped forward. "Then tell me." He hesitated. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "You erased yourself, Evelyn, on purpose." Evelyn felt the weight of Blackwell's words settle in her chest like a stone. "You erased yourself?" The sentence echoed in her mind, unraveling every question, every moment of fear. She forced herself to stay steady. "Why would I do that?" Blackwell sighed, stepping further into the dimly lit room. "Because you found something you weren't supposed to. You were getting too close and they gave you a choice, forget or die. You chose to forget. You let them wipe everything." Her hands clenched into fists. "Who are they?" "The ones who are still watching. The ones who let you wake up just enough to see the cracks, but not enough to remember what's behind them. They needed to know if you would stay buried. But you didn't." Evelyn's pulse pounded in her ears. "And now?" Blackwell studied her, his expression unreadable. "Now you have another choice. You can keep running, keep chasing ghosts, but you'll never be safe. Or you can let it go, walk away, stay missing." Silence stretched between them. Rain pattered against the window. She thought of the missing persons poster, the erased files, the whispers on the phone. Every clue had led her here, to the truth she had once willingly abandoned. And now, standing at the edge of her past, she had to decide if she was ready to reclaim it, or lose herself all over again. The choice was hers, and this time no one could make it for her.